the relative soundness of all these loans that were being made. And the vast majority of the financial world took those facts and arranged it into a pretty picture, because it paid to do that. That a very small handful of people arranged it into a very ugly picture, and the question kind of was why? Why did they do that? And it turns out there were kind of deep character reasons for why they did it, but they were for one reason or another incentivized slightly differently. Yeah. And so when you go about reforming this system, you've got to go out reforming the incentives of the people in it, because if you don't, if people will see what they're paid to see, and you've got to pay people to see the truth.
In finding these fascinating people who bet successfully that the system was going to blow up. I mean, it's the one-eyed doctor with Asperger's syndrome and the handsome guy who doesn't inspire confidence and says too much, who works in a garage in Berkeley.
You've actually read it.
I've actually read the book. Yeah. You make these guys almost lovable, but
it really bothers you, doesn't it?
Well, instead of seeing the crash coming and warning the rest of us, they see the crash coming and think, how am I going to get giantly rich off of this?
True. But only partly true, because they also went to the SEC, they went to the newspapers, they screamed to high heaven about what was going on. Nobody wanted to hear it.
Once they knew they were going to make hundreds of millions of dollars off of it.
Yes. But you know what? If everybody had thought the way they thought, none of this would have ever happened. Right. It's very hard to get upset with them for being smart when the real diabolical behavior was so stupid. Yeah. I mean, the real problem was these big Wall Street firms became the dumb money. If everybody had sort of approached the investment business the way these people did, we wouldn't have our problems.
Yeah, it helps if you read. You know, it helps if you're interviewing somebody to read the book, and it helps if you are investing millions of other people's money, millions of other people's dollars in something, to read the prospectus, which only the guy with Asperger's did.
As he said, only someone with Asperger's would read a subprime mortgage bond prospectus.
Michael Lewis, author of The Big Short, right now the #1 book in the country, deservedly so. I always feel really honored when you choose to come on this show, because I know you could go anywhere, so thanks a lot.
Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Okay, here's the story. A civilian working for the Defense Department decides to set up a off-the-books spy ring. The goal is to gather intelligence on specific targets, specific people, so that the military can then track them down. But there are a couple of logistical problems. First, where do you find civilians available for hire who are qualified to do such difficult, dangerous work in a war zone? Secondly, is it legal? And third, where do you get the money to hire these people? Of course, there's also the whole question of whether the secret inside the government thing can ever be known about, let alone whether or not it's against the law. Some answers to some of these questions can be found in today's New York Times. Reporters Dexter Filkins and Mark Mazzetti describe how the scenario played out not in 3 Days of the Condor, but in real life, in our real war in Southwest Asia. According to their sources, Defense Department official Michael D. Furlong personally hired private contractors to carry out an intelligence gathering operation in Afghanistan and Pakistan. That information was turned over to the military and may have been used in targeted assassinations. Joining us now is Mark Mazzetti, national security correspondent for the New York Times. He was part of the team that won the 2009 Pulitzer Prize for international reporting. Mr. Mazzetti, thanks very much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Give us the time frame of when all this is said to have happened.
The operations, we believe, began sometime in 2008, but it was last summer, the summer of 2009, where Mr. Furlong and his group of private contractors really accelerated their operations. So we think that from around July of 2009 through the fall was when things were really going on, and then they were eventually shut down either late last year or earlier this year.
This is something that was happening within the Defense Department, but it wasn't known throughout the chain of command. This may have been an action by Mr. Furlong alone as sort of a rogue operator?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, that's what we're still trying to figure out. There's a lot of people who are not owning up to any of this at this point and saying, we didn't know about it and this guy was off the reservation. We still need to find out exactly who was approving his operations and also who he was sending this intelligence to, right? So clearly there was probably a consumer for what he was doing, taking it and using it in some fashion. So we need to figure out exactly what happened after the intelligence was collected.
And are we aware if the intelligence was used directly to order assassinations of specific targets?
Well, some people we talked to said that some of the information that was collected was used to do specific strikes. Like, for instance, there was a group of militants crossing the border from Pakistan to Afghanistan on mule carrying rockets, and after that information was collected that they were crossing the border, they were hit shortly afterwards.
Is this illegal?
Well, I think we need still to get more details about what happened. Okay. We're in an area where there is sort of a gray area in legality, because the military can't just act as covert spies like the CIA can. There's rules that govern the military's behavior, in part because the military wants to be seen as different. They want, if a military person gets taken hostage, they want the U.S. government to own up to the fact that he's in the military, and they want him to be brought home. So the Geneva Convention applies. CIA doesn't. It doesn't apply. So, so there are rules governing what the military can and can't do, what information they can and can't collect, and who they can use as intelligence assets. So we need, as I said, we need to get more details about how this operation went down to find out exactly whether legality, whether rules were broken.
But it has been referred for criminal investigation.
Yeah, there is a Defense Department criminal investigation going on into Mike Furlong. There's a number of charges. We understand part of it is contract fraud, which is him taking money for a specific purpose. We think it was about $22 million under a contract, and using it for something that he was not authorized to use it for.
And what was that? I mean, this is part of the fascinating part of this, because it brings in this whole other circle of people that you wouldn't expect to turn up in a movie plot like this. I mean, a news story like this. What is that $22 million program that they may have raided for in order to fund this program?
Well, at least part of that money was designed for a website that was for primarily the military to use. It was started by two journalists, Easton Jordan, the former head of CNN, and Robert Young Pelton, who is a writer, and he writes about dangerous places and travels around and documents war zones. Their idea, they'd done it in Iraq, and they decided to try to do it again in Afghanistan.
That was Iraq Slogger.
Iraq Slogger was the name of the site.
I used to use it every day. So, yeah.
And their idea here was to do the same thing for Afghanistan and Pakistan, and have the government be the primary client. It would be a public website that people could subscribe to, but they wanted the government to buy in because that's primarily where they could get their money.
And maybe that money didn't all go to that.
Maybe all that money didn't go to that.
Mark Mazzetti of the New York Times, incredible reporting, incredible bombshell. Thanks for joining us to explain it. I really appreciate it.
All right,
nice to see
you.
Thanks.
Good to see you.